PR Connections Radio presents
Voices of humanity, we need to hear your voices. We need to hear your voices. Nice. I like that. That music is, I like it better. What do you like it better? The beginning. I like that. Really good job, Dana. I like that. Hey, welcome. A warm, very warm welcome to Voices of Humanity, coming to you from prconnectionsradio.com, the voice of new media. You can actually get the rest of our shows on the website if you want to just go in there and you can just watch them till your heart's content. I think we've got quite a few. Lorrie Simunovic is with me again, and we've had quite a series. We've done I think it's 18th show, I think. Something like that. So there's a lot of content there and a lot of other guests that have been on the show. Thank you so much for joining us. I am Sandra McKechnie, your host, and I do learnings, trainings called Double Consciousness, a concept put forward by W.E.B. Du Bois. It's not Du Bois, it is Du Bois. He disowned the other. However, it was around before him, but he coined it, he honed it. It's fantastic training that I just adopted. It's how we've packaged it and deliver it that makes it unique. And our next guest actually on the 23rd, and I hope you join us. I have a special guest that was huge, she had a lot to contribute in these trainings, learnings. It did a lot for her. And she's coming on to share. She is a social worker, double consciousness has had a great impact in her life. So she's out there doing tremendous work. And she's coming on to share with us as a woman of color, as a woman, period. It's going to be wonderful. Join us. So today I've got our special guest who's kind of like a co-host. I don't know who we're co-hosting each other, but she's got a lot to share again. We actually are highlighting 2 shows today. All right. The first one, and this is out of the 18 shows. Okay. So we are highlighting a podcast 13. Lorrie went in there and she got them numbered and everything. So you can go on the website and check them out too. So the first one, excuse the animals, it's real time and it's live. I'm just spraying the cat here. Sorry about that. Got to do with, okay, what's love got to do with it? You know that I don't want to start singing because I don't want them to slap me with, I'm a singer, so I get nervous when I start to sing something because you can get, disciplined love through critical self-reflection. What's love got to do with it? Disciplined love through critical reflection. We're going to look at that show and one of our other shows that were so great. So if you want to go on and look for that, podcast 13, what's love got to do with it? Disciplined love through critical self-reflection. And then the next one, the second one will be, can we really dispel normative beliefs or myths we've lived by our whole lives? That's podcast 12. We're kind of going backward here. So today I'm thrilled about this because it's meant a lot to me, these shows. And so we just wanted to give you a few highlights. Next week, we're starting a little bit of a new chapter. And I am going to actually put this one out. I'm going to go first, Lorrie. Is that okay?
Please.
So first, though, we want to give you sort of the umbrella that we kind of go by. So we created this. Lorrie put this together, and it works really well with what we're doing for this section or this series that we're in. So she's going to share that with you, and then we're going to highlight some of these shows. And hopefully you'll go to prconnectionsradio.com and have a listen. All right, Lorrie, you're on.
Okay, so we've had 2 different sets of learning objectives, and these are the learning objectives, the umbrella over all the work that we've done in the approximately last 9 or 10 podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct in terms of the number.
Yeah, it's about that, I think.
Sorry?
It's about that. It's about that, I think.
Right. We're aiming for ourselves or anybody that's interested in this work to develop a critical understanding of the history and impact of Eurocentricity, which involves examining the roots of Eurocentric thinking, meaning all things European are at the center, and that's how white supremacy, for example, plays itself out. That's how racism plays itself out, and so on. And its relationship to colonialism and imperialism and its impact on communities that are constructed as other marginalized, as marginalized and as so-called non-European cultures. By gaining a deeper understanding of Eurocentricity and its effects, we as learners can begin to identify and challenge Eurocentric assumptions and biases. We're not saying all things European are bad. We're saying it's one of many. There's multiple ways of being in the world. Second one is developing critical consciousness and cultural humility. So we covered a lot over the last 9 or so podcasts. Another, it's to develop critical consciousness and cultural humility. This involves developing the ability to recognize and challenge Eurocentric biases and assumptions, and to appreciate the diversity and complexity of here I have non-European cultures, but I'm going to check myself. Let's say all cultures, calling them non-European, and perspectives. So multiple perspectives. It also involves developing the skills to communicate and collaborate effectively across cultural difference. And in a number of the podcasts, you've spoken to, Sandra, how there are times where we have a lot of simpatico and similarity, and there are times where we're like totally on a different page, and we find a way to embrace those multiple ways of being in our same space without dominating it in a way that one way is the right way.
Yes.
And promoting social justice and equity. We both believe in this by taking action to challenge and dismantle Eurocentric. We're talking about in the context of say, the notion of cultural superiority, to dismantle Eurocentric structures and practices. And this involves advocating for inclusion of all cultural perspectives in education, and many domains, promoting policies and practices that promote diversity, equity, and inclusion, for example. It also involves challenging Eurocentric ideologies and practices that perpetuate systems of oppression and inequality. Like, we're not going to boil the ocean, because that does sound like an ocean of objectives. So we've been taking them one chunk at a time in these podcasts.
So that's just an idea, sort of where we were going and where we were coming from, and objectives, and that we really wanted to leave an impact. Hopefully it would leave an impact. So what's love got to do with it? Disciplined love through critical self-reflection. I'm looking at this love thing, and I'm looking at 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7 from the scriptures. It's a huge call to love, and it's patient. It's kind. It doesn't envy. It doesn't boast, not proud, doesn't dishonor others, not self-seeking. And of course, for me, a lot of that's in context, because there's other precepts that add to that. And it doesn't mean that because you're not self-seeking, that you're not ambitious, and you don't go out there to do what you need to do to prove your work and your talents, your gifts, and so on. It's patient, it's kind, doesn't envy, doesn't boast, not proud, doesn't dishonor others. And that doesn't mean that you don't speak up for yourself, right? Because you can do that. That love can still be infused on the inside of yourself, because you're loving your neighbors as yourself, right? So some people, I think, Lorrie, may advocate for others, and it's easier to do and do a lot of this work. And at the end of the day, I'm just saying, don't forget yourself, because if you don't prove your own work, right, you have rejoicing. You're always looking to have rejoicing in others and not in yourself alone. So you need to have in yourself and also in others. So this wonderful patience, the patience, well, that's a whole other thing. The kindness, and doesn't envy, doesn't boast. I don't think that also means, it's contextual as well. that you're not going to be able to say, you know what, I'm proud of what I've done, or what for me, Most High God has done through me. I'm glad for this kind of love, and that I was able to participate in that. So what's love got to do with it? I think I just froze. It has a lot to do with it, and that's what we're striving today to share with you. What does love look like in the face of oppression? And that's where we're going with this. What does love look like in the face of oppression when you're feeling dehumanized, right? When you're handling all these systems of oppression, what does it really look like? Are you able to be kind and right, not proud? Are you able to manifest a lot of these wonderful attributes of love? Thinketh no evil. And I filled in that, when someone feels dehumanized, belittled, within these systems, it's very easy to think, oh, you, this, that, blankety, blankety, or you see others being hurt. And even coaching someone, a specific person, a couple of people that really stayed with me because they were going through what everybody's calling gaslighting. Lorrie and I talked about that, and gaslighting is a term, I think it was from a play in the 1800s, where this man was, they had these, those oil lamps, and he was turning them down. You had a way of turning them down so his wife would go crazy. She would think something's wrong with her or something like that. Anyway, the gaslighting thing came out of that, apparently. And I think about it's someone trying to make you think that something is wrong with you, that you don't see things the way that you see them. And so this individual, and she knows I'm mentioning this, not her name or anything, but it touched us because we went through a year coaching. And there, she had these terrible evaluations came in on her job. And she's an exceptional worker, by the way. But these horrible, and it was management. There was a whole management issue. So we were praying, coaching, just holding her up because she felt so oppressed. And she's like sometimes I think, is it me? But this woman had a beautiful reputation, and management changed, and then everything just went south. It was horrible, and her evaluations were terrible. So finally, we got through all of it. She had this wonderful, in the same job, but a different manager. And then her evaluation, saying evaluation, but you know what I mean. What's the other name for it, Lorrie? Her
that's the name, I think.
Evaluation.
It was performance appraisal.
Yes, performance appraisal. Okay, there you go.
Same thing.
There's others too. But honestly, she had this beautiful, we were just on the other night, just giving closure to the horror of what happened. and she had a union. They were fighting tooth and nail for this girl. It was just like, it was a moment of testing in her life. And she came out beautifully. And we were just spending so much, that session was just about rejoicing the fact that she came through. And, we don't want to put color to everything, but it was not Black people that was doing it too. You know what I mean? It was really difficult. And she was honest about that. And we went through it. And one of these days, I hope she's interested in coming and speaking discreetly, inadvertently about that. So that was really huge for me, thinking and noticing that. I was actually sharing something with Laura. I think that was for the next one, but we're talking about love being like in I think I told you about that situation where I had this crush, on this guy in school. Mm-hmm. And my friend who, her and I were just like, we hung out together, smoking cigarettes, doing your thing, what you do when you're in grade 13, right? I don't think they have a grade 13 now. I'm aging ourselves. But anyway, the wonderful part about this was really close to me. I remember she had this blonde hair. And of course I was assimilating, shucking and jiving, just trying to fit in and belong. And I really, you're not even cognizant of it. You're just doing it because you want to be like everybody else. And that's partially, that is so important. Your parents want you to fit in. They don't want you to have problems in school, So anyway, I remember I had this crush on this. I think he was brunette, was white. And I wanted to go to the prom with him. There's a whole lot that lies underneath that, as a lot of you will automatically know. So you're assimilating beyond repair some of this, okay? So now I've got to go to the prom with this white guy. I got to go. So I said this to my friend, and she said, "Oh, come on," because she used to say anything to me. She just used to, and sometimes she meant no harm, but this time she said, "Come on, you don't want to go. You know, he doesn't like black people. He's not going to take you to the prom." And I remember it hit me in a way that I call it that thing that and you know what I'm talking about as I'm talking, okay? That thing that kind of, you almost feel like you get a hit in the back of the head and you get something in your gut all at the same time. And then someone might be sitting there going, "Why'd you want to go with a white guy anyway?" Well, hello, the ships brought us up in here to the Americas. White is right. Brown, stick around, and black, get back. And no, though logically we know it's nonsense and people are tired of, talking about this kind of oppression. Well, it's all over the place. It's our indigenous peoples, our Latin Americans, it is with the marginalized so-called peoples that have a way of thinking about themselves for hundreds of years via oppression, via slavery. I hate to use the S word, but when you have been assimilated upon trauma, it sticks with you. I wasn't even aware. My parents we never talked about these things at home. Not really, not in any depth at all. It's just like, come on, just put on your shoes, your coat, pull up yourself by your bootstraps, do your lessons, get on to school. But I remember when my friend said this to me, it was a matter of a fact. She wasn't trying to be mean. She said, you don't want to go to the prom with you. I don't like black people. And it just reminded me, slap on the head, boom, you're black. Oh my gosh. Right. It separated me. And that went on and on, story after story in my life. And I understood that what love has to do with it. I think that should be a whole teaching for my people alone, because the expectation maybe that we continue, just love them. They don't know no better, just love them. And some of our forefathers, this might have been attitude, just got to love them. But the pain of that comes with you. And I don't think people realize that. And there was another story, just so you know what it looks like. What does love look like in the face of oppression? It can look angry. Yes. You can become an angry black man or an angry black woman. Absolutely. And when people say things and you realize they also were in the time warp, the 1800s, 1900s, 2020, they're in the 21st century with you. They came from somewhere and some things were passed to them. So loving in the face of oppression is very, very real. And I was looking after a lady many years ago. I was an attendant to her, and her sister, I knew her well, and she had one child and I knew the child, and she had another baby. Anyway, and she brought the child, and I think she was almost 3. And when the child was rolled in the pram or the stroller, the baby looked at me, and it just looked at me and cried like viscerally. It was loud. And I just looked at the mom and I said, "Is there something on my face?" I didn't realize. The mom said to me, "Well, oh, sorry, she's just not socialized to being around black people." And I didn't know do you know when you don't know what to do with something? Like, you just don't know. I literally thought there was something on my face. You know what was on my face? Melanin. So highly melanated. Those things, when we talk about oppression or whatever in our Indigenous brothers and sisters have to deal with as well. And I had a Korean gentleman on here. I'm hoping to have him back. Wonderful man. And didn't even think that he went through anything. Absolutely. Right. A young lady from India came on telling me their stories. A lot of people that are so-called marginalized come in all colors. Unfortunately for black people, that pseudoscientists put us at the bottom of the rung. And though it was disputed that the darker the skin, the more dehumanized, well, here we are, So what does love look like in the face of oppression? Can you help us with that, Lorrie? What does it really look like?
Well, you've given 4 incredibly powerful examples. You talked on a systemic level, a personal level, an emotional intelligence level, a social level, a work level. That's for the systemic, and then on a very personal level.
Mhm.
And when you talk about the anger, for example, your message basically to be loving. I'll get into my piece in a moment, but yours is so powerful. I really want to focus on that first. Um, it's healthy to resist oppression. It's an act of love for your collective and for our collective. So
Mhm.
Saul Alinsky, in his book Rules for Radicals, and that book was written for have-nots. His words, not mine. And he said it's an illusion that one's own welfare can be separate from others, but you're in a situation where you're being separated in those moments on a systemic, and your friend was being separated. And what the anger does, if we're going to focus on that for now, is it literally, because you're talking about healthy anger, right? Where you're standing up for yourself, you're separating yourself from what you don't want, and you're saying, this is what I am going to manifest. It's not just what I do want. If I'm not going to get it from you, I'm going to give it to myself, and this is my requirement, right? And it's the impetus for change, for real change on a systemic and on an individual level.
Yes,
So you're sorry.
I said absolutely.
Yeah. So when you're talking about your friend that was this incredible employee, what came to me is literally I have a number of quotes because you asked me the question. I knew that you were going to do this piece, but what does love look like in the face of oppression? Well, a big piece that you said in all 4 of those stories is about belonging, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the woman that was in the institution wasn't belonging when the new management came in. What if you start to unpack that, we could do just that now, but let's not, right? It's about you don't belong. It's being called a performance appraisal. You've been like super excellent, if there's such a thing as super excellent. I don't know if you can say that in English like that. To all of a sudden you're not passing. It's not about your well, it is about your performance within a very specific context. And I think it'd be very interesting to ask, what those performances were. And I again think it's around belonging. Brene Brown talks about, I remember this one hit me so deeply. The opposite of belonging is to fit in. So in all of those situations, you're not going to date that young boy because you don't fit in. You're not going to get the performance appraisal because you're not fitting in the way that we require.
Absolutely.
Fitting a fit. Like I've actually heard senior people say, "Well, that person isn't a fit." There are places that are more inclusive and that will say it's. I can't remember the exact term, but it's an ad as opposed to a fit, because it's moving towards a more inclusive culture. But you actually have to think about that and unpack that and dismantle that kind of ideology and memorization and thinking. So maybe the people that she was working with before had more of an inclusive kind of mindset and way of being in the workplace, whereas the new people, I'm just making assumptions here, so I'm saying it's just a possibility. We're more into kind of a Eurocentric, or whatever it was, our culture way of being in the world. And so belonging to me is an aspect of love. It's within the context of inclusion, of social justice, of rights. So then I started, I've said on one of the podcasts before that I prefer to live in a world where we all belong. Right. And that means decentering Eurocentrism, which we can talk about in a moment. And not only promoting, but living justice and equity. So when you're doing your coaching with this woman, for example, you're living it. When you're making jokes about your skin, you're basically saying, actually, I know what's going on, and I'm going to do something about that, whether it's I'm going to be angry, or, when you were younger, we talked about this before, and you alluded to it now. You just said it. You didn't know. You were programmed to think in a certain way to be able to survive. If we're moving towards a place of surviving and multiple ways of being in the world, then that picture is going to look, even what you might say to her would look completely different. To get there, for example, your scat piece would be an important piece. Then I thought about, again, Baldwin, I love him. He talked about love. And to me, this is what love might look like in the face of oppression. His words. Love
his words would be perfect for it. I was saying his words would probably be perfect for it.
God, absolutely beautiful. Love takes off the masks that we fear we cannot live without. And no, we cannot live within, which is what you talked about. It's painful to live in that. I use the word love, quote unquote, here not merely in the personal sense, but as a state of being or a state of grace. Not, this is going to be a bit strong, his words, not in the infantile North American sense of being made happy, but in the tough and universal sense of quest and daring and growth. To me, that's old love.
Absolutely.
So then,
Lorrie, I was going to say the growth part is huge here because because the assimilation thing kind of flows over my people, like they come from they're small here, right? I came when I was 8. I'm 60 years old now. So it kind of just weaves in and out of your life. You get moments of culture, ethnicity, weaving in and out, but you're still here in the Americas. You're still in this construct. So I tell you, the growth there, that growth word is huge because it's when you get older that you look back and you go, oh my gosh, and you talk with your friends. Like I say, we're the stats. You're in a room and you're going, oh my gosh, that happened to you. I know we know it happens, but hearing it come out of your own mouth, knowing it happened to me, it happened to us. We're living stats.
And that's, and if I'm not using the right words, please correct me because it's your experience. That's pain, right? And that's traumatic. And that growth is post-traumatic growth.
Well, yes, for sure.
And in your case, you've often talked about this. It's also spiritual. It's both transcendent and descendant.
Yeah.
So heaven on earth in terms of your specific context. Mine is multi-faith, right? But and yours is a bit different than mine. So yeah, it's huge. It's huge.
And the beauty of it is, though it's traumatic, when you have your community, and my Ethiopian friend, whom I love dearly, she says this to me, when we have community, like she's a therapist, she said, you guys have put us out of business. When you have a real solid community of people, not even people that are your bloodline necessarily directly, but people that, like the people in my life right now, there's healing. Like there's a tremendous actually voicing what has happened to you, caring for each other, learning some stuff and bringing it into your homes and into your workplaces. You can get through that job. It's so you kind of slide through it. However, you do feel it.
That's why I brought up turns like traumatic because I don't think it gets by the construct of whiteness or any form of domination like the gaslighting that you just mentioned. It does not get taken seriously because if it does, then we have to look at ourselves as white people.
Yeah, definitely. That is,
right.
That is
and that's painful too. Having said that, the piece, it is an illusion that one's own welfare can be separate from others. We can fool ourselves for a while. We can destroy the earth, but we're finding out now what's going on, right?
Yeah, it does make people feel yucky. Your point didn't come out yet, so you got to make yours. I'm making sure. Did you want to make go to the second one? You wouldn't believe the time already. When did that happen?
No, we'll get there because this was going to be my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is going to be a conversation, right?
So no correction needed. It's fine. I just wanted to make sure. You know how we do. We just go and
we'll definitely get there because I've been kind of merging the two.
Okay. Oh, wonderful. Okay.
Yeah. So and just the last point on this, we can definitely get to the second point. Very influenced by Fromm in terms of love being. What is his book called? The Art of Loving. Love is an art. And again, it's both. Andrew Harvey talks about transcendent descendants. He's talked about it in a number of his books, especially the Spiritual Warrior book, where, there are spiritual people who go out, and we've all done it, I'm sure, because I don't want to be judgmental, where, we're going and we're praying and we're trying to transcend, but all this stuff is going on. So how do you kind of do the activist work too, with that love and that spirituality, with whichever it is? And so Fromm gives examples of love being about care. You covered some of that, about respect and the ability to respond, responsibility, and knowledge, learning, like knowing what you're dealing with when you get in there. And that it can be, this dovetails with what Baldwin said. It's a discipline of concentration and patience and supreme concern with the mastery of the art of love. And you've given the example of your uncle. It's become a practice of how often you visit him. I hope you don't mind me saying that again, but I think it's
yeah, it does. It does become a practice for me, and that's my uncle. That he really didn't pour into my sister and I the way that, not like I would my parents. I'm going to my mom right now after the show, because automatically, and she's bedridden, and I look after her because she's poured the stuff into me. It's easy. A lot of people don't have that, but they look after their parents anyway. You're obligatory, that sort of thing. And that's how it is with my uncle. But I make a choice to go and to see him and to stay there, and disciplined love. And it's wonderful, actually. Pays off.
And you're, and it's not in the harsh sense, I must do this. It's something that you love to do consistently.
Yeah.
And love multiplies and grows, and you say, oh, there's something here I didn't see before, because maybe I was caught up in, more of a feeling love.
Yeah, absolutely. Even though it's not a benefit for me per se, like those warm fuzzies, because he's not able to give that, but it definitely is a wonderful discipline. And that's enough benefit for me. And it feels great.
Yeah. So did you want to cover anything more? Because we do have about a half hour on the.
I was going to say, we're not done yet.
No, but before we go to the second one, did you want to discuss something about?
I was actually, there was something on my mind, and I remembered thinking, I have a couple of white sister girls that, we've known each other many years. And I remembered when I started doing double consciousness, the trainings, learnings, one of my sister girls said to me, she said, I feel like now you've told me what you're doing and everything, that I have to go apologize to all the Black people. And, I was pretty firm with her, because I thought, look, I'm not going to roll out a carpet of empathy right now. I just felt it was my moment to state what this was all about, period. And I was sliding into that slippery slope of, oh gosh, no, I didn't mean it that way, and blah, blah, blah. I just felt like, look, this is what it is. And if you want to come to the trainings, you can, if you can. But we went down the slope of, oh, I just feel that's how I'm feeling now. So now I have to come and roll out the carpet again now, feeling another sort of oppression. I've got to feel that I've got to now make you feel comfortable. It's about you.
Yeah. And
I love you. I still do to this day, but white sister girl, I'm not having it. So we went through that period. Now we're good, but we had to go through that period. That was challenging. What does love look like? And she's not aware, even if there's a percentage of that looks oppressive. But so I had to kind of just stand my ground in love, really, because I care about her, and this is it.
That's very interesting, because that goes across disciplines in terms of an insight for me. But let's talk about the process of recovering from injury, trauma, or systemic oppression. Let's call it that, and moving towards understanding and restoration. In that restoration process, what often happens is, whether it's like people from the same community or people across community, in your case, it was across communities because she's white. Sometimes we create these connections in pain where we're leaning into each other and making each other feel good, but then not doing the work. right? And what happens is both feel really great. Oh, you understand me, this is great. But you keep coming back to each other. In that specific context, I've heard many activists like yourself saying, like, this is your work. I got enough of my own, right? You've got, you're not saying it that harsh, but it's upon me, it's upon her to do our own work, right? It's hard enough to do our own work. Your work is different, might be different than my work, right? But I can't go and keep, what can I do? Or like, here's some stuff. There's books out there. There's white circles, for example. There are circles where, African Canadian, for example, folks will invite you in. Like there's all kinds of stuff out there, but that's where the emotional intelligence come in. If you see somebody's carrying something on their back, and you're saying, and they don't. This is not you. I'm just extending this now, and they don't have any money, and say, "Do you have $10?" And I can't even pay rent. Right? That it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and also this is where that subordination, domination can come in ever so slightly, and then you almost start to respond. A lot of people, so-called marginalized people, like you're apologetic all of a sudden again, and of course, I always think there's another way to handle that besides rage or getting angry or fed up. The knowledge to know how to handle it is important because, and especially if it's someone I love or care for, which we've known each other for many years, we'll still meet for dinner, and that's fine. This was something that we had to agree to disagree on. I am not going to, you don't have to, it's up to you if you want to go and feel you got to apologize to all the Black people in the world, you go and do it. That's, but she couldn't handle coming to this. She's never come. So that's fine.
I misunderstood. I thought you were saying she wanted you to help her somehow. I heard about the apology, but I heard more that she was leaning into you too hard. Maybe I misunderstood that.
No, what was happening there, the feeling was, I'm feeling so bad now. This is, and that I've got to now go and apologize to all these Black people, all the Black people that I've, and she loved me, she loved whoever. She was not overtly, of course, it's in the time warp, right? Where she might not have had bias or prejudice overtly, but it was this. I feel bad because of what you're doing.
Right. I mean, it's a stage, and now it's time to, do the work, as I already said, but it's also time to share power, to release privilege, to find out where I'm implicated. And I can feel bad through that process, and I can find ways to do that work. But, do I put my money where my mouth is? Maybe that's too harsh, but, it doesn't have to be money. It can be anything. Like, am I making a difference in terms of if I've chosen a stance of love within the context of anti-oppression, that is defined by the communities that have been oppressed.
I mean, she's feeling bad, and she doesn't want to come because she's feeling so bad that I'm going to feel worse if I come. So it's something that she's got to deal with, not mine.
Yeah, it's her work. It's her work, and she'll probably come back or not. We're all doing what we can.
It's that simple. Because I'm forever changed, and she knew that, and it took us almost a year to see each other. Right? We text and stuff, but it was just, the elephant's in the room. And it's what it is. And I
don't think we're meant to carry other people's pain. I believe in empathy, but once we're carrying it, I think that's another form of, I don't know what to call it. It's not fun.
Absolutely. That was one of those moments in time. And I think even I had another friend that said, now I know better in this way. I feel a lot differently because my life has been transformed by doing this. But I had mentioned to her, and she's very, very close to me. What would you do if your son, who is white, married a Black girl, sorry? And she said, "Oh, I think it would be it'd be easier if he didn't." And at that time, I didn't take that well. Because I thought, what do you mean easier? We just actually discussed it recently.
That's maintaining privilege. I don't know.
I mean, we will have to disagree on that. She said she didn't mean it that way, but we'd have to disagree on that because at the time where I was, again, I think people have come out the womb to gaslight and not realize,
Right.
that they're saying that. And it really taught me as I'm speaking about different groups, Sandra, watch what you're saying. That's not, like you need to count to 10. If you don't know something, just if you feel you don't have that humility to really ask a question out of respect or because of some semblance of knowledge, we got YouTube and we got all kinds of stuff. Google.
I can't tell you how many times I heard the children will suffer. What the hell? I'm talking about white folks that say that, right? And, yeah, that's true.
You know what? The children will suffer.
In the context of love, there, and this is that on many different levels, there is a distinction between carrying someone and caring for someone.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you're saying, I'm not going to carry this.
No, I choose not to. Because, whatever. Now I understand things a little differently when she said it that way. And I thought, he's like, so now you're saying I could get all up in what the Black woman, she's not worthy to marry your son, but I have a different understanding of that now, culturally, spiritually, definitely. But those things
being reactive. So I own that too.
Are you owning something right now?
I can be loving in the way anyway, you know what I mean.
Yes, no, I do. And then I know you're ready for cultural superiority.
Not at all. Just kidding.
So go ahead. You start it.
Ask me the question. Go ahead.
No, you start the umbrella, the next title.
Okay, so Sandra asked me to talk about two different, there's more. Some key points around cultural superiority and cultural humility in the context of Eurocentricity, which is part of the learning objectives we just talked about. So it's a supremacist attitude. Cultural superiority is a supremacist, racist, all of the ists attitude that one's own cultural values, beliefs, customs, aesthetics, and ways of being are inherently superior to those of other cultural groups, right? It manifests through prejudice, domination, mockery, ignorance, and assumptions of civilization and backwardness. It hinders social justice and equity in diverse communities, and dismantling cultural superiority is essential for equal and equitable coexistence in diverse societies. So I've mentioned that. So it's built and enacted upon the impulse, the unconscious and conscious impulse and inclination to dominate. Right? So that's one way of defining it. And I'm willing to be challenged on anything. Can't stop me anywhere.
You go ahead.
We're having our conversations. These are your words, and correct me if I'm not on point. We're swimming in a toxic pool of golden brass. And then you talked about where did all the white rage go? That's a recommendation. You were talking about how in this context of superiority, we as white people are bred to harm without knowing it sometimes, or sometimes knowing it. Did you want to speak to the white rage?
Oh, yes, that's Carol Anderson's work. Woo, she's amazing. That book is called Where Did All the White Rage Go? That's the title of the book. And it used to be, lynching, hanging, rape, all of that, things that we're all tired of talking about. But where did it go? Right. So if I'm right here trying to work this through in terms of my forefathers and what happened to us and coming through the time warp, being dehumanized and etc., and having my stories and sharing them with you. So I'm going through things still and, changing and healing. So what about the person that's come through the time warp with me that has white skin, right? What have you gone through? What have your forefathers taught you, right? And where did all the hanging and where did the KKK go? Where did that hatred go? And it's something to think about because I'm doing this. What are you doing next to me? Because we all came through that time warp, right? It's like the alien, that Sigourney Weaver. I love it because it really speaks to me. I don't know if you saw Alien. If you haven't, look it up. It's great. So there's this beast they're up in the space or something. And this beast is killing people and planting eggs somewhere. I think they planted one in her brain. So anyway, she was looking after this little girl that she just fell in love with, beautiful little girl, and she's running after her. And finally, they're safe. They run after the thing. She's killing it, or part killing it, wounding it, whatever she was doing. So she gets the child, puts him in the capsule. They're going back to Earth. And she seals the capsule, and it's like, oh, the child's safe. She gets in and she goes, and then you see them. They arrived. And so when they get back to Earth now, she opens this capsule and the child is dead. The thing came with them. The alien came with them. The child was dead. And I think about that going back through the time warp, right? Right, 19th century, keep going, 17, 16, 18, 19, 20, 21, here we are. I brought what? What did I bring with me? What did you bring? We all both got some cognitive dissonance, right? Where things we can't reconcile, and where our behavior, the Sunday church people, they cannot believe that. No, that doesn't have to do with me. I have to disconnect myself from that. Well, it's in you. The alien came with you through the capsules, because reconciling that would be that you have to admit that your great somebody did those evil things, right? And yes, it happened. But here we are. I've got white friends. You got black friends. All kinds of nations come in our home. We break bread with many people. But so these conversations amongst your friends and family, I think they're beautiful conversations. They're honest conversations. And so that really hit me when we're talking about, what were we saying, Lorrie? What did your question to me?
About White Rage book. Carol Anderson.
Where did all the white rage go?
Yeah.
Where did it go when people are exhibiting that amount of hatred, dismembering folk?
Right. And she, I just saw something online. I haven't read the book yet, but I think she wrote it in 2018, if I remember correctly.
Oh, yeah, it was a while back.
She wrote about the American experience.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get into politics, but like how that white rage played itself out, which I I'm really looking forward to reading too, because it plays itself out politically. It plays itself out on so many levels.
She's all up into politics. She's amazing.
Yeah.
So that was one of the books that I really and then there was that other one we spoke about. I mentioned it to you, Catrice Jackson. What was it called? Weapons of Whiteness. Weapons of Whiteness. And of course, she gets into talking about Becky and Debbie. Excuse us. That is from a real story where someone was called the police on some people that were barbecuing. Black people were barbecuing someplace. I guess that they were disturbed. They weren't supposed to be there or whatever. I don't know, some nonsense. And so it was Becky and Debbie or somebody, one name like that. And then it went off onto this whole thing. And white women are very insulted about that. But I'm telling you, it comes from somewhere. When we get irritated about this sort of thing, please, it does come from somewhere. Trust me. So anyway,
I don't think that communities can be oppressed for, I don't think communities have ever been totally oppressed, but experience various forms of oppression, and people in positions of dominance expecting any form of reciprocity, especially if it's as violent as what you're talking about, what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So the next piece, were you going to say something else before I go there?
Oh, no, go ahead.
So the next piece, like this is all on a foundation of myths, which I won't unpack because we've done it in a few of the podcasts. Colonial notions of cultural superiority. The actors create myths that do not support true reciprocity, and it serves the maintenance of the falsehood of cultural superiority through false myths like shadism, reverse racism, assimilation. Yes, assimilation is real, and it's false if you believe in cultural humility, and that's what we're working towards, that which we'll talk about in a minute. The single story narrative, there's only one story. Chimamanda Ngozi did a beautiful piece online about that. Neutral, that spaces are neutral and objective, for example, employers and so on. Colorblind education, cultural appropriation, model minority myth, deficit-based myth. We've talked about some of that stuff, and justify existing power imbalances, hindering efforts towards true equity, justice, and inequality. So my whole thing is, well, not my whole thing. I think ever since I can remember, since I started reading as a little girl, anything about love, I want to read it, right? So to me, this cultural humility piece is imbued with love from my heart. And what that means is challenging, and there's some anger in there, hopefully positive anger, right? Challenging assumptions of cultural superiority is vital in anti-oppression work, which again, it's healthy to resist oppression. For example, the communities that we serve in the context of anti-oppression social justice work define what reciprocity looks like. It's not for me to tell someone else what reciprocity looks like. And that's a process. We build relationships. So I'm going to actually, I have it over here farther down. One definition of reciprocity is it refers to the mutual exchange and flow between people, which each gives and receives value equitably and equally. That in itself can be unpacked for a while. We can do that in another show if you like. Depending on the context, it requires deeper listening, self-reflection, and suspending judgment to foster mutual benefit. Again, the multiple worldviews, right? Rather than one-sided gain. And capitalism is all about one-sided gain, individualistic gain, mainly. True reciprocity builds lasting bonds through mutual empowerment. And one of the ways to do that is through cultural humility, an interrelational approach to learning and interacting with people across and with various cultures, and involves self-reflection, openness, and a commitment to lifelong learning. I'm not going to go too much more into that because that in itself describes it. And I'll tell you why, because you had suggested that we maybe unpack cultural humility, and you did tell one of the stories already. And you can give another example if you want, where what's a scenario around cultural humility and what we came up with, how it plays out in our everyday lives. So do you want to unpack the teenager one, or do you want to do the one with your student when you were coaching? What example? Because you were saying you wanted to do one example where you defined it as cultural humility.
Oh, I think I already did that one.
Oh, did you do that?
I think so. I had so many, but I don't want to go too far because it's already 5:51. Can you believe it? So
So then just in 2 sentences, because I don't want to impose my opinion on you.
Go ahead.
I really believe that when you and your friend were speaking, you had a culturally humble approach. And I remember you had 2 or 3 sentences in one of the podcasts.
Yeah.
Opposed to cultural superiority. I'm not asking you properly. I finally got there.
Yeah, it was, we were seeing things, and of course, it's a black and white thing again, but we were seeing things differently, very, very differently. And I was insisting that she saw things. I was almost insisting, not too much, but I kind of was. I'm very good at that, and I can regulate myself that way, but I still felt like I was insisting somewhat. And she's a little more laid back. But I wanted more from her in terms of the way that I felt that she was. She does a lot already, but I felt like after we've known each other 30 years, that I wanted her to be on board with this work a little bit more. And so she was like, but that's, I am, though. I do this. I take a lot of risks with my family. I do. And it's because of how connected we are. So the humility, we're 2 different people, nations, cultures, everything. But we come together in this beautiful space because we've known each other this long. And it was hard enough, I think, on her on some level. Because when I started doing this work, I said, wow, this is great. And I was telling her all this stuff and it was spewing out of my mouth. I was studying, blah, 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 blah. And she says, but what does this have to do with us? I mean, I don't understand. What do you say? Where'd you getting all this from? And I would never, because she's one of the first people I'd call, and I just give her all of the verbiage, and I was there. And I said, we were talking, and I said, but we're good. Where are you getting this? We're good. And I said, yeah, we're good as long as I'm assimilated to be like you in this world. And it hit me it was like a 2-edged sword, and hit me, and I went, it's true, And it's not fault. It's not your fault or mine. That's my thing. But together we can do something about it. And that whole cultural humility part, I think, came in for both of us because she didn't know where I was going. Because to her, and it's hard for her to say it, yeah, you're black, but you're white. You present white. And it's the truth. NASA's trained all your ancestors. Here you are. You're a perfect, assimilated person. I'm not in the positive sense. There's a lot of that wasn't positive, but it turned me into a different person, which I'm so grateful. I'm thankful to God for it. But that initial, I had to use some humility, and she had to use some as well, because it was like, oh my goodness, this is beyond us. And I think what's beautiful about it is, for both people of faith, the Most High God has we just kind of had to leave it here. We had to leave it, let it steep. Just let it steep. You're not disrespecting me. I'm not disrespecting you, but I have changed, And when she started coming to the trainings, learnings, things changed for her too, because then she started speaking to her family differently. And I think the humility that she got was that, wow, this is not just my sister girl. She talking sense up there, right? That was a huge moment of humility for both of us. And for me also, turning things around. If you have friends that are white, whatever, and you're doing the work or not, like just to look at things from the perspective without feeling you're losing a part of yourself and your dignity as a person, right? When you've all lost so much of it during the time warp, but understanding that, okay, it's not your fault or mine. Okay, but I need you to I would like to see that humility. And if I don't see it, I move on. Not from the relationship, but my heart, a part of me does move on. I have no choice because I'm not going to stay and belabor it and beg people or whatever. But it came very naturally for her that she had that humility. Really good stuff. Why don't you close with that comment about this? I love that.
Sorry, say that again.
Why don't you close with commenting on that a little bit before we go?
Sure. I'd like to acknowledge that you've shared a lot of your own stories and showed your own vulnerability, and I'm very grateful for that. I also believe it's important that I don't kind of just sit back and not share more stories myself. So what I'm committed to myself, I know I have shared stories before, and we had decided upon this, but if there's any feelings around that, I want to acknowledge that I'll share more in terms of the future, because I was kind of coming more from a headspace today in terms of some of the theory and so on. So I think I often do come from that place of the heart, but I didn't do enough of it today. So I just want to acknowledge that and do more of it in the future.
I just love you for that, because honestly, it's funny. I was thinking that I would like to hear more of your stories. I was thinking about today, which is very strange that you're saying that. I'm like, where's you going with this?
I could feel it, and I thought, what am I doing? Right? So,
and I love the stories because you know how I feel about the stories. I want to encourage other people to tell their stories because they're priceless.
Yeah.
They're priceless as you are going through your journey and your healing. Because your stories can really help me to know, oh my gosh, it's not me. I'm not tripping. The whole world, I'm just not a glass. Right? The gaslighting, it's not me. That's such a powerful thing. So thank you, Lorrie.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You did get to the 2. Yay. We're going to do better. We're going to rein it in better. Thank you so much for joining, Lorrie and I. I appreciate you. And please go to the website, Voices of Humanity at PR Connections Radio. Sandra McKechnie, Lorrie Simunovic. Thank you, Lorrie, for joining me yet again. We're going to come back at you the 23rd. Okay? Be there. Nice to see you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
PR Connections Radio thanks you for watching this podcast. Check out more episodes of this show and our others at prconnectionsradio.com.